Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Fast Away podcast. I am so excited to have Fast Away certified coach and Hormone Queen, Julie Durr, on this podcast. We are going to chat about all things perimenopause and menopause. We're going to discuss fat loss, energy, and vitality. Julie, thank you so much for being with us.
I am honored to be here, Amanda. I listen to this podcast regularly, so I'm happy to be a guest.
Yay, perfect. Well, Julie, I love to hear from my podcast guests. When and why did you decide to enter into the wellness industry? What really prompted that journey?
Yeah, so this journey goes way back. So I've been a Fast Away coach for over 6 years, but honestly, my journey started over 50 years ago. To be honest, when I was thinking of that, I was like, well, 50 years, that's a long time. But so I'm 56. When I was 5, my dad was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So for maybe listeners that don't know the difference, type 1 diabetes is more of an autoimmune condition. So he had to take daily injections of insulin. And right after he was diagnosed, my older sister, who was just a few years older than me, she was young, was also diagnosed. So I grew up in this house where my dad and my sister were giving themselves injections of insulin at every single meal. They were pricking their fingers, testing their blood. And I was so intrigued by that, even as like a 5 and 6 year old. So it started then. I was one of 5 too. So I was always like, Dad, let me check my finger. I want to see what my blood sugar is. So that kind of really started an early thought process if I want to do something in the medical field. Also kind of, I was thankful that I grew up like that because we really ate pretty healthy. We had like whole foods. I grew up, eating kind of, a pretty nutritious diet just because they couldn't eat anything that was junk food. They really couldn't do that with their condition. So I'm thankful about that. But I would say one thing in my early childhood that kind of prompted my own health journey was I became a vegetarian at the age of 12.
Whoa.
So, yeah, so my dad was a veterinarian. So we grew up with lots of animals. We had a farm, but we didn't live there. So we had cows, we raised rabbits, we had geese. And I'll never forget the day I rode my bike into the driveway and my dad was butchering rabbits in the garage. And I seriously, I can visualize it right now, that exact moment when I realized what he was doing. And I declared that day, I'm never eating meat again. I'm going to be a vegetarian. Don't ask me how I even knew what that was. So I really went for decades. Probably I went from 12 till my late 40s, not eating any meat. And you have to
Wow.
understand that was like in the late 70s or 1980, maybe. So I didn't know what I was doing. I had absolutely no idea. I didn't pay a bit of attention to protein at all. So I went decades like that. So that kind of was part of my own health journey. Then I went to college, became a physical therapist, and worked with a lot of high level athletes, did more outpatient orthopedics in my 20s. And then I took up running. So I was always a high school athlete, but I started running in my 20s and started doing marathons, thinking like that was the best way to be healthy. And I loved it. I was good at running. And I love watching your daughter. I love watching Emma run too. It's fun to watch that. So anyway, I started running marathons thinking, okay, I'm a vegetarian, I'm running, everything's great. I'm healthy. Then my 30s hit, which is a good decade, but I had 4 kids in 5 years in my 30s, and I had 5 pregnancies in 5 years. So I went from 30 to probably 38 straight being pregnant or breastfeeding. And that really kind of started my hormonal changes. On top of that, I was also diagnosed with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism in my 5th pregnancy, which is super common. As we talk about hormones, we can talk about that. It's really common for like thyroid changes to happen during pregnancy or during menopause or during a transitional time when your hormones are changing. So that kind of started my deep dive into functional medicine. And that was 20 years ago. So I started really kind of investigating functional medicine and root causes. And I thought I had it all dialed in my 40s. And as we were talking a little earlier, I felt great in my 40s. I was thinking, okay, I'm eating good, I'm exercising, my kids are good. This menopause thing, no one was talking about it. I didn't think about it. But at 49, it hit me. I was like, what has happened? That's when the hot flashes, the night sweats, the mood changes, the anxiety, all these things start happening. A little bit of belly fat. Weight was never my big struggle, but the hormonal changes I knew were happening. So I kind of suffered in silence for a while because I was, quote, the healthy one. I was thinking, why is this happening to me? And no one else is talking about it. So I suffered in silence for a little while. Then I actually went to my doctor and I was like, something's going on. What should I do about this? Should I do hormones? Is there anything I can do? And she basically was like, no, there's nothing you can do. Just ride it out. It will get better. And she was a couple years older than me. So I trusted her. And then I just, in my mind, in my heart, I knew there was more to this. So probably a year into menopause, I got some advanced training. I became an integrative health practitioner. I did like a whole master's level hormone certification and really better understood what is going on. And that was the time when, yeah, I was already doing the faster way. I was already coaching, but I was realizing there are other pieces to this puzzle that have to be in place. And I really want to understand hormones and hormone replacement. So, fast forward now at 56, I will say I feel great. I mean, I'm still 56. Things don't quite operate like they did, 2 decades ago. But it also prompted me to create another program, which I really kind of call my signature program, which is the Midlife Hormone Solution for women that are just really feeling like they don't know where to turn and they really want to understand hormones and hormone replacement. It's kind of like an 8-step, all the things that you need to do to address hormones, but diet and exercise is always the foundational first 2 steps, which is huge because that's where Faster Way comes in and shines. So here I am, 56, feeling good and loving that I can help other women feel good too.
I
Long
love it.
story. Yes.
No. It's so great. And wow, I didn't realize that you were 56. That's encouraging for me because you are energetic, you are still fit. And, I was telling you right before I pressed play that I've been worried about turning 40 for 18 months. And my birthday was this month and I'm still in my 30s, but I've been worried about turning 40 because so many of our faster way coaches or just people on Instagram and social media are consistently talking about the woes of being in perimenopause and menopause and I'm like, I want nothing to do with that, but I think it's really just probably not as bad as the perception online. But even recently, I'm like, similar to you in your 30s, for my 20s and 30s, I've been pregnant or breastfeeding basically the entire time. For the past 15 years, I've been pregnant or breastfeeding, and that's also hard. That's very hard being postpartum, having a baby drain all the nutrients out of your body after a year of breastfeeding. So it's just it's a different hard, but being postpartum and through that season is, always going to come with its ups and downs. And probably the same could be said about being in perimenopause and menopause. But I want to dive in, and some of it will just be selfishly like, tell me what I need to know, Julie, and then help, the people who are listening who have been suffering in silence. And I hate the thing that really just frustrated me about your story is you said, I went to my doctor and she told me you just got to write it out. Shame on her. Shame on her. But it's not her fault. She probably just really thought she was giving you good advice.
She did. And I try, she went through the journey. She was older than me. So it wasn't like she was keeping some secret from me. She really didn't know. And you have to realize 6 years ago, when I went through menopause, no one was talking about it. 2 years ago, when I created my program, no one was talking about it. Literally no one. And now here we are this week, Oprah had her special and I feel like partly it's the algorithm of, the Instagram and where I choose to look, but I feel like suddenly everyone's talking about perimenopause and menopause, which is a good thing. But I think there's still a lot of misinformation. Women are still so confused, even though it's in the limelight.
Yeah. So confused. I kind of joke sometimes. I'm like, I think Faster Way made perimenopause trendy because so many of our clients and coaches who are in perimenopause have gone viral over the past couple of years talking about perimenopause and how to overcome some of the symptoms and so forth. So let's just dive in. I want to discuss some low-hanging fruit for our ladies who are in their 40s and 50s and journeying through this. And then I have like some commentary items that I want to share as well. But what is the biggest mistake you see women making who are in their 40s and 50s dealing with the symptoms of perimenopause?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is that women are so obsessed about the being skinny, and at all costs, no matter how bad they're feeling, they will continue to push that narrative and do whatever it takes to be skinny. And a lot of us that are in that kind of perimenopause, menopause, time frame grew up like that. That's, where the scale was the barometer of our success and how healthy we were. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think that, women they just don't have a plan, so they don't know what to do. And they find they're incapacitated because there's so many different avenues to go down and so much different information that they don't know where to start.
Yeah, they want to be skinny, but probably the biggest misconception or myth is that in order to stay thin, they need to eat less and eat less and eat less and eat less to their detriment. Oh my gosh, Julie, just today, this morning, I was listening to a podcast from a gentleman who's extremely well known, has multi-million individual reach. And he was doing a little segment on fat loss and the science of fat loss. And he started the podcast by saying, well, as we know, the most simple way to lose fat is to eat less calories than you are burning. And I got so frustrated, Julie, because this is bro science. And this guy is allegedly a phenomenal, scientist and da-da-da. And his main point as he kicked off the podcast was, well, as everybody knows, the most simple way to lose fat, and he actually used the word fat instead of weight, is to eat less than you're burning. And it is just not rooted in truth. And ask any female in perimenopause and menopause who's tried to eat less and exercise more, and she will tell you this individual who is saying that is not correct. And it's just the fact that that's still the philosophy perpetuated is extremely infuriating for me. Thankfully, one of our board members, who's a leading researcher on women's fat loss, has started to see the light because of the fact that his wife has gone through menopause, and the strategies that worked for her in her 20s when they were first married are no longer working. And he's like, oh my gosh, there's something called fat loss resistance, and maybe there's a hormone element, da 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 da. And so he's like one of the first men really diving into this whole area of research. But I think,
I always tell my husband that, who's also a doctor. I said, when every man that is telling women to do X, Y, and Z, when their wife suddenly is going through this, they're going to change their tune. It's just going to take that. And a lot of times, even for women that are perpetuating some of these things that don't work, they think work, but then when they're in that phase, they'll realize, okay, actually this doesn't work. So yeah, it's a narrative that I think will change for a lot of people.
Yeah. So you said one of the biggest mistakes you see women make in their 40s and 50s, perimenopause, menopause, which, by the way, perimenopause can start in your middle 30s. It can start in your late 40s, your early 50s. It just depends on the individual. But, women chase being thin or being skinny instead of chasing the right things, which my opinion would be strength and longevity and da-da-da. And what I said is this misconception or myth that eating less and exercising more is the answer. That's really not the case. But let's talk through some of these solutions then, because people have heard me say this so many different times. I'm sure many of your clients are listening too, but what is one of kind of the first steps to say, I am in perimenopause or menopause, and I do want to burn fat and lose weight? What is one of the first things that we need to address?
I think one of the first things that women don't think about and underestimate is their stress level and how much, for sure, diet and exercise. I think women are already doing that in some capacity, but you can do that perfectly. And if you are super stressed out, it's going to affect, and I know you've had other guests on here that have talked about cortisol, but when it affects cortisol, it affects progesterone, it affects thyroid, it affects all of your hormones. So I think that's one huge thing that women don't really consider. And it's hard, right? Especially for those of us in our 30s and 40s, like we're raising kids, you have a profession. It's really hard to be able to get in a place where you're feeling calm every day. That doesn't happen for most of us, but it's a really big piece of the puzzle. And then I think there are other things that women need to look at besides diet and exercise, the toxin exposure, a lot of these things that, are not mainstream, but toxin exposure is huge, and that greatly disrupts hormones and, how your body is eliminating hormones, how your body's detoxing everything. So I think those are a couple of things that women don't think about. And then I would add another third piece is your gut. So as your hormones are changing, your gut is changing. It's automatic. It doesn't matter if you're doing the same things, but when your microbiome's changing, that is changing everything too. So there are strategies you can implement, especially diet and exercise strategies that are going to address those things. But some of them are just, lifestyle driven too.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take some deep dives on the how. So you mentioned stress. There is confusion regarding this whole concept of stress. I'm stressed out, things are stressful. We're not looking to remove ourselves from stressful situations. We're looking to become more stress effective. Okay. I remember training clients back when I was in my young 20s in the gym, and I train ladies in, their 40s and 50s, and they, oh, well, I have to clean the house when I get home, and then I got to pick up the kids, and and then I got to go to work, and I'm a volunteer at the church, and it wasn't the fact that they had multiple activities to do that was killing them from a stress response standpoint. It was their perception of the stressors in their life or the circumstances. And it's so funny because I've always considered myself to be a very stress effective person, but I've gone through these seasons where my perspective shifts or my mentality shifts, and I'm just not dealing with stress in the same way, even though it's the exact same circumstances. And so I have to really check myself of, am I allowing the narrative to be, a certain way? And do I really need to just like slow down, take a breath, do some, breath work and meditation and extra prayer and just to like thrive through this season and become more stress effective? What are some of your favorite strategies, maybe one or two, to become more stress effective? And again, it's not that we're not going to have stressful circumstances. We have kids, we have jobs, we have lives, it's not the circumstances themselves. It's how you perceive those circumstances and what you allow to impact your stress level.
Exactly. We can't all go sit on a beach every day, right? Like we can't remove the stresses. That's huge. Yeah, so I'd say a few things. And I think this takes time to learn and implement. And I think a lot of women, as they kind of step into their 40s and beyond, are better able to say no, but you have to be able to say no. You have to not put everyone and everything above and beyond yourself and your own health. So that's definitely one strategy. Early, easy things you can do just from a day-to-day basis is getting outside, getting some sun in your eyes early in the morning, going for a walk outside, which is really more of a parasympathetic activity. It's very calming. If you can't do that, whatever, your kids are up early, take them with you. Or, some things like binaural beats, which are kind of a meditation type of sound that you can do. For me personally, every morning I get up, I've had the same routine forever since my kids were born. And I'm an early riser and I'm thankful. I always say, I don't know how any woman that doesn't get up early can ever have multiple kids or even one, but I've always gotten up early. Maybe I can't imagine like getting up when they get up. So I've always gotten up early. I, do a little prayer meditation. Now I have my PMF mat, and I know I've seen yours too. So every morning when I get up, I lay on that for a little bit, just kind of decompress. And then usually go for a walk outside or go for a run outside, kind of when the sun's coming up. That's my own strategy. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but I think finding what works for you is just a couple little things that you can implement, whether it's just breath work or something really easy that helps you kind of shift over into that parasympathetic mode. Because I always tell my clients, you can't be in the parasympathetic mode and the sympathetic mode at the same time. It's one or the other. And you cannot burn fat if you're constantly in that sympathetic stress, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
So you have to find ways.
You have to find what works for you, and you have to create a situation in which you are able to sit in that parasympathetic mode. So for me, when I'm in Costa Rica, and you're right, not everybody can sit on the beach all the time. I wish I could, but when I'm in Costa Rica, I wake up 5 a.m., 5:15 a.m., always before the sunrise. I watch the sunrise. Oh my gosh, it's my favorite. I go to bed like so excited to wake up because I can just sit there and enjoy this most beautiful, aspect of God's creation. Then often I'll go stand in my grass for 10 minutes as well for some grounding, because a grounded object cannot be inflamed. And I do multiple walks on the beach. That's Costa Rica. Okay, so I can't do that necessarily when I'm in Florida. We've got school, we got work, we got this, we got that. So here, my biggest thing when I'm in Florida is when I wake up, I cannot look at my phone. Okay. Because the moment I look at my phone and start scrolling through social media, I'm immediately in a stressful, even just subconsciously, like, oh man, that girl's so beautiful. How do I be so beautiful? She's so young. And so rule number one for me, and we're just sharing, practical tips with you guys. Rule number one, do not look at that phone first thing in the morning.
Huge. Yeah.
Huge. My kids do tend to get up very early. So, and I'm like the main event at my house, the dogs, the kids, everybody. The minute I'm up, it's like everyone sniffs it out, and they're in my bathroom. The minute I get in the shower, everybody piles in there. I'm doing hair, I'm answering questions, I'm getting people organized for the day. But then once they get off to school, I do methylene blue in the morning, and I'll sit in front of my red light panel. I personally do the PEMF mat later in the day when I do my ozone therapy, but I've had to create that situation for myself where I just take 10 minutes and I sit in front of and it's only 10 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for me, it is really important. And because the light is so bright, I can't really work on my phone. So I'm like forced to put the phone to the side. And again, just little points in the day like that. And then guess what? I'm going to go 220 miles per hour from 8 a.m. until 5. I'm going to go on a walk with the kids for 10, 15 minutes, which is great. Put the phone away. I'm going to sit in the sauna for 45 minutes. So you have to find these pockets, and it's easier said than done. Listen, you've got kids. Did you say you have 5 kids?
I had 4. So I lost one of mine really early on. So I had 4. Yeah.
So you have 4.
They're all between ages of 20 and 25. And one just, it never, you never stop being a mom.
Never.
One of my daughters flew home this morning from Orlando in the middle of tornadoes. Another one of my daughters, they're both nurses, my older 2, drove from Kentucky in the tornadoes. And so here I am, ready to join you and thinking, okay, this is out of my control. It's out of my control. All I could do is say a prayer, and hopefully, and they both arrived where they need to be. So, right, like it's those kind of things you could get caught up in, all the things that you have absolutely no control over, and it will overwhelm you. You've got to find a way to not let that happen.
You have to find a way. You have to create a situation in which you're not consistently chronically stressed. Okay. We need cortisol. Cortisol is extremely important. You can live without progesterone. You can live without probably estrogen. You cannot physically live without cortisol. You need cortisol. However, if you are constantly under stress, we're going to have way worse problems during perimenopause and menopause than if we say, I'm going to create a situation and be so ruthless about the fact that I'm going to say no. I'm going to sit for 10 minutes on my own in the morning, 45 minutes, in my case, on my own in the evening. And yes, then once I'm out of the sauna, all 5 kids are sitting, on my lap again. That's fine. They're just, at that age. But it's like, guys, ladies, men too, we have to be ruthless about becoming more stress effective. Because if you're not, it's not only going to impact your quality of life and your health, but also everybody around you.
Yeah. I had a new client yesterday in the Faster Way, and she was saying, I don't have any time. I have no time to work out. And she has a younger child and an older one. And I said, listen, I have many clients who work out with their kids. And, my kids know, they've grown up with the fact that I work out, and as adults, they all work out. They grew up with that. And it's not like I need to have the separate time. They can join me, or, they just, whatever, it might be interrupted, but there are ways you could do it. And honestly, your kids are watching what you're doing. And my kids are older now, but for those, listeners that have younger kids, there are ways. I know it seems overwhelming at first, but it's doable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have 5 kids. So anytime employees or clients or coaches try to use this excuse of having kids on me, I'm like, I have words. Let's just say, I know we got, little ears listening to this podcast, but I tend to do a little bit of tough love. I'm like, we're going to overcome that. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about some of the other detoxification strategies that you like to implement, because this is a really important component of overall health, specifically as we age. So what are your favorite detox strategies?
Yeah. So when I became an integrative health practitioner, we had months devoted to detoxification. And that was really kind of my first introduction to, wow. When I learned, and I think this study was over 10 years ago, that the average newborn baby is born with 200 toxins in its umbilical cord blood. I was like, what? So imagine that's when you're a newborn. If you're 56 or 40 or 38, you have a lot of toxins, right? It's just the way we live. So I think, first of all, is awareness, understanding where you're being exposed. And I think the average woman is exposed to over 150 toxins before they walk out the door in our hair care, in our makeup, in our skincare, in our cleaning supplies, in our laundry. So understanding all that, because it definitely impacts your whole health, but it really impacts your hormones. So I'd say that's number one. And then trying to find, you don't have to just jump all in and go crazy and try to take out every toxin in your world, because that will be overwhelming. That will definitely cause stress. But the basic things you can do, get cleaner products. And, there are lots of them out there now. 5-10 years ago, it wasn't the case, but now you can get, cleaner makeup that doesn't have the phthalates and all the chemicals in it, cleaner hair care, cleaner skin care, cleaner, like personal care and household cleaners. So I'd say that's number one. Then understand how diet is huge for detoxification. You have to have protein, not just to build muscles. Those amino acids in protein are helping you detoxify. If you don't have those, you're not able to detoxify. And I have colleagues that won't even do like a detox with someone who's a vegetarian if they don't feel like they are getting enough protein, because you need that. And you need fiber. You definitely need fiber to detox. You need fiber to get, detox your hormones and for normal bowel function. So those are easy things. Exercise is great for detox, sweating. I have a lot of the quote biohacking things. I know you do too, the red light and the PMF mat and the sauna. Those are great. They're an investment though, but I think they're a worthwhile investment, but there are a lot of other things you can do. And then I do a quarterly detox every 3 months, and I have been for 6 years. So I do that every 3 months. A lot of times I'll have clients doing it with me. I'm doing actually one next week. It's 7 days, but it's a whole kind of kit. It comes with a detox kit, and I do a lot of education around that. So the kit provides, the phytonutrients, the amino acids, antioxidants, and some kind of gut support. And then I do a lot of education around toxin exposure, how to eliminate it, where it's coming from, and do kind of just a comprehensive 7 days for anyone that's interested. But it's a really big, important piece. And people always say, oh, like my grandma never did a detox, which is true, right? My grandma never, I don't think she did either, and she lived till she was 96. But our world is different now. We're exposed to so many things from the second we open our eyes. So.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. People well, my grandpa will live to 100 and he didn't did it. Yeah. Your grandpa didn't have the toxicities that we have on that toxic overload. From a nutrition standpoint, two things you said that I want to draw out. We need protein in order to detox, and we need fiber. So the average American, I think it's like consumes 14 grams of fiber a day. It's something.
I think it's even less than that. I think it's like 5 or 6. It's low. It's really
unbelievable. Yeah. We need to be aiming for an adequate amount of fiber. I at least have, I would say 30 to 35 grams a day. What would you say you have?
Yeah, I'd say about the same, 30 to 35.
Yeah. So, fruits, vegetables, if necessary, supplementation, protein. What I didn't hear is when and why you transitioned away from the vegetarian lifestyle back to carnivore. So tell us a little bit about that.
You know what? That was really prompted by the Faster Way. That was my aha moment. Like,
love it.
Oh my gosh, what have I been doing? Like I haven't, and that like when I started the Faster Way, protein wasn't the topic of conversation, right? I mean, It's only been hormones and protein are the big conversation pieces in the last 2 years, I'd say.
Yeah.
So nobody was saying specifically protein, but it was my aha moment. Like, oh my goodness, I have not paid any attention to protein. And I will say, I eat fish and chicken now. I've not dove into red meat. I have one daughter of one of my 4 who actually 2 of my 4 kids are huge carnivores, love their steaks. And I always made my kids protein, animal-based protein. Actually, 2 of my girls were vegetarian for a while, 2 of them huge carnivores. But anyway, so I've always made it. It's just one of those mindset things like that. I told you that visual of my dad and those rabbits stuck with me for a long time, and I can still see it. So I make myself, believe me, if I didn't ever have to eat any animal protein again, I would be okay because I don't love it, but I make
Yeah.
myself eat it. So
Yeah.
it was a faster way for sure. That
And
really changed that.
what benefits did you feel when you started to eat more protein again?
Oh, I definitely had more energy. I started building more muscle. I've been exercising my whole life, to be honest. Um, and was always fit, but I started seeing a change in my body composition in terms of I'm building muscle. Hmm.
Yay. Okay, that makes me so happy. How many grams of protein do you aim for per day?
I usually get about 110. I'm not one of those people that can get 160 or
Like Lee
when I watch
Berg.
Lee, I go, oh my gosh, like that is amazing. Yeah.
I know. Okay, we don't have too much time left, and I want to be sensitive to your time. But let's talk a little bit about HRT. I know nothing about HRT. I want to learn from you. Like I said, this is like a selfish, podcast too, because I want to hear what I need to know before I journey into my 40s. But what is like? Just give me the most basic information about HRT.
Well, here's the thing with HRT, there's so many different modalities, right? There are creams, there are patches, there are oral, there are injections for, estrogen. And then when it comes to progesterone, there's progesterone or a progestin, totally
Mm-hmm.
different. Progesterone is natural, bioidentical. A progestin, which you will get like in an IUD
Mm-hmm.
or in some other, pharmaceuticals that women are taking, or even in the birth control pill. Those are synthetic. So I know there's so much fear around hormones and hormone replacement. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with the Women's Health Initiative. I don't know if anyone's talked about it on your podcast, but that was the study that came out in 2002. And I was in the middle of having babies. I just had my third. And I remember it just in the back of my mind, but that changed the whole dialogue for 20 years. So for 20 years, women have been petrified. Now that whole study's been walked back. So, you know, hormones are safe and effective if done right. However, a lot of women aren't doing them right. So I see clients all the time that come to me because they're feeling terrible on hormones. And the first thing I say is, what are you taking? And do you know what your levels are? A lot of women are just given something and their only, symptoms are checked, but they're never, ever, they never have blood drawn and to see what their actual levels are. And they don't address all the underlying things. The diet and exercise foundational for sure. The gut, the adrenals have to be addressed. Toxin and detox pathways have to be addressed. So I'm a huge proponent of gut testing. I do stool testing. I do the Dutch test, which doesn't give you it's not the gold standard for what your levels are, but it shows you how you're detoxing your hormones. So I personally do a type of hormone replacement that is not mainstream. A lot of women don't even know about it. It's called physiologic dosing. But, I kind of slow walked into that, right? From first being told, absolutely don't do hormones, to trying to figure it out on my own and getting education, to trying a few things, and then really kind of diving deep and understanding I want to optimize my bone health, my brain health, my cardiac health, because most women are dying of heart disease. They're not dying of cancer. And there's this fear that hormones are causing cancer. There's been no research to show that bioidentical hormones cause cancer. And if you think about it, you had 5 kids, right? I had 4. If estrogen caused cancer, we would both be dead because our hormone levels are so high when we're pregnant, yet most women have more risk when their hormone levels are low in terms of cancer risks, heart disease risks, osteoporosis, which I'm super sensitive being a physical therapist and treating thousands of women, especially that had hip fractures and wrist fractures. It changes their life and it's very deadly. So, I would say, number one, you've got to have a good practitioner. You can't unfortunately, I'm married to a doctor. It's nothing against doctors. You can't just go to your GP or honestly, a lot of times even your OBGYN and say, I want to do hormones. Tell me what I should take because who knows what you're going to get for an answer. But I would say the number one thing, educate yourself. You have to know what your goals are. For me, those are my goals. With some women I work with, they just want to feel better and they don't want to have a hot flash. If that's your goal, I always say, if that's your goal, I mean, a standard like patch and oral progesterone can probably do the trick. But if you truly want to optimize your metabolic health and longevity, you might want to look at other options. So that's why I have my program, which I go really deep into pros, cons, benefits and options for all of these things, because it's, it's an extensive kind of research to actually figure out what's the best for everyone.
Yeah.
So.
At what age do women need to start doing research and really considering this?
You definitely need to do research before it hits, because for me, it hit and then I was already behind the ball. So you lose a significant amount of bone just in that first 5 years. You lose like 30% of your bone mass. So if you all of a sudden are in menopause and then you're trying to figure out, and I'll tell you, it's not an easy journey. And my personal doctor is actually in Florida. She's very close to you. But depending on where you live, it's really hard for some women. If you live in a more rural area or just an underserved area, it's really hard to get the resources and to get access, which I hope is changing. I think it is changing over the last couple of years, especially with, Oprah and other celebrities talking about it. But I would say educate yourself. You have to know kind of the pros and cons and think about your own goals when it comes to hormones. And then while you're educating yourself, make sure you're looking at those other pieces, the diet, the exercise, the gut function, managing your stress, all those things, so you can move into hormones and not have an issue. Otherwise, you're going to end up seeing me and go, I'm doing hormones and I feel terrible. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's go back and look at X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. So I need to be doing research now, is what you're saying.
You do, although you're going to be way ahead just because the dialogue is out there. There was zero dialogue when I was going through it. Now I feel like people are more up to speed. And I think more doctors are being trained, and it's nothing against the doctors. They had absolutely no training in medical school about menopause.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I just heard a doctor on a podcast recently say we had 30 minutes of training on nutrition and 30 minutes of training on perimenopause or menopause. It was like 30 minutes within their entire,
4-year
years.
program. Yeah. Yeah. My husband always says he learns everything that he knows about hormones from me.
Yeah.
And he's not in that space. He's orthopedics, but it's just the reality. So
Absolutely. Julie, tell us where we can find and follow you online.
yeah, so I'm at Julie Durr on Instagram, which I usually post every day. And I probably confuse people because I post fitness and I post nutrition and I post hormones. I like to talk about it all just because that's my kind of my niche. I like to do all of it. And then I also have my website, juliedurrwellness.com, where you can find me. I have free discovery calls for anyone that's interested there too. And then my Faster Way link, of course, as well.
Amazing. Well, Julie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We truly appreciate it, and we are better off for it.
Thank you. I enjoyed being here.
Bye, everyone.